Hey everyone, Laffey here. Just wanted to give a quick announcement before the video starts and a little bit of a sponsor that I now have a Nexus.gg account where you can buy both DKO runes, the Ultimate and Founders Edition of Divine Knockout, and Smite content such as the Ultimate God Pack and even Smite gems from my store, and you can support me. The link in the description is below. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the video.
Alright, so the new patch notes are here, and to have a first look at the new patch notes, Spirit Shrine update. My expectations to this are pretty, I'd say middle of the barrel. I know what I'm going to expect walking into this. I know we're expecting the Sasano nerf because of what we talked about on 0.19.56, where Sasano would be nerfed later in the next patch. So this is the next patch, so we should be expecting Sasano nerfs. And I'm also expecting Amaterasu changes. And on top of that, Thor changes. People have asked for Thor changes a lot as well, so... I mean, Amaterasu, Thor, and Sasano, I'm all expecting their changes within this patch. But at the same time, I think there's going to be probably a lot of different things that I'm going to be very surprised about hearing. And I don't know if I'm going to exactly agree with them or not, but we'll just have to see. We'll just have to jump into it. Spirit Shrine update. Wanted to give some context around the recent updates to the status of Zeus and the plan balance patch. Long story short, we plan to release the update in its entirety today. However, we ran into a late stage issue that was severe enough to not move forward without fixing it. Normally wouldn't delay us beyond a few days, however a few days in this case is the holiday season, and our platform partners take a well-earned break from certification. In the meantime, we decided to push out as many of the balance changes as we can without doing a full update. This will address many of the concerns the community has about key characters. Some changes are missing as they require an update, which we will deliver alongside Zeus when they are ready. Today's patch notes as well as a preview of next patch are both live here, so you are all fully in the loop with us. Okay, so we're getting patch notes that have already basically gone through because this will have been done all yesterday. So there'll have been balance changes from put into effect yesterday, and then there'll be more coming likely early January. Very likely early January. So that's going to be something interesting. So the new 3D3 map, Spirit Shrine, I'm going to say... I really... as someone who played this map in Alpha, I really like Spirit Shrine. I think Spirit Shrine is a great map, and with a great environmental hazard, so I'm really happy to see this in the game now, and I hope that a lot of people will enjoy it as a 3v3 map. God cost. In order to address community concerns, we're reducing the price of gods to 500 runes from 600. This means the price of a single god aligns with the price of our base rune pack. It will issue a refund of 100 runes for every god purchase that players have done via runes. That is good. This means that you're no longer stuck between buying the 5 US pack but not being able to get a god, and having to buy the $10 pack to then have to purchase a god, but then not be able to purchase 2 gods. So now you'll be able to straight up purchase a god with 1 pack, which is actually really nice. And that means that I think people are going to complain less about how their system was predatory or something, like you were forced to upgrade your purchase pack in order to be able to actually acquire what you want. I think that's a good quality change, really. Oh, we have the god icons now for god balance. That's really nice. Anyway, god balance. Moving on to the first set of god balance that is already live. Amaterasu. Amaterasu is currently overperforming when successfully performing fast combos. Yes. Killing it to a low percentage. Yes. She can. If there is technically a 0% combo, but it has to be very true to do it. Otherwise, you are pretty much always looking at least 20% plus. So yes, this is all true. The goal of our change is to diminish the amount of damage that she is able to do, as well as delaying her ability to kill with the ultimate. Final eye. Reduced overall damage to 20 was 26, so this is now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, roughly about 4 per tick. I might be incorrect on that. I will have to double check that, but I'm a little bit. If you haven't realized, if you couldn't already tell otherwise, I have been very ill for the past few days, so I haven't been able to provide out guides. I haven't been able to push out content such as guides. I've really been waiting for recovery, but I figured just because these patch notes came out, I just want to deliver this content to you guys anyway, regardless. So there may also be some cost that I'll have to cut out from this video in post-processing. So sometimes I may say things incorrectly as well. That's just... yeah, I'm not fully functioning. Reduce the knockback by 15%. I think these are good changes to Final Light. I think that this means that if you get hit by... I think Final Light will still always KO over 100%, but I think that means we're going to less likely see 60% KOs from Final Light, which I think is really good, because Final Light should not KO at 60%, in my opinion. I think that should really be left to a scenario where you have to R into F, R true combo F at like 120% or say higher, much higher to KO, instead of just doing it at 60%. That's because like doing it at 60% feel really cheap and unrewarding towards players. So I really like this. And we have changes to all of her talent, to pretty much a few of her talents, which it looks like it's all of the beginner talents really. Way of the Blade has now reduced extra damage from 2 to 1, so that's now only going to be 1 bonus damage, which is okay. Out of here, the second airlight damage has now been reduced to 4, and the knockback has been reduced to 10%, which was 5 and 15%. Yeah, once again, we're just dropping 1 extra damage, and we're dropping 5% knockback. That's honestly completely fine. Switching Strike, extra damage has now been reduced from 8 to 5, and has now been disabled until the next major update, Zeus, which we'll cover later down. I like these changes, but I think the thing is that Amaterasu's problem isn't her damage. I mean, Finalized damage and knockback was a little bit of a problem, especially at the 60% range with the confirmable combo with the R, so I have no issues with that, but I don't... I mean, yes, she was easily able to add up damage overall, time and time again, just by hitting light combos, just getting those confirmable light autos, getting those confirmable combos. See, I can understand why they wanted to do that, because a lot of her talents, a lot of Amaterasu's talents, just give her a lot of extra bonus damage, and especially if she can hit her combos. So I can understand targeting a lot of her damage. It is going to bring her down, but I still think there's an issue, and this could get addressed in the major patch. I mean, I haven't read it yet, so I don't know. But the main problem, the main problem is mostly her uppercut, isn't Sunlight Uppercut, her R, and just being too confirmable. Even then, it results in free damage. It can result in a free spike. It just does too much for her. Next change is coming out for Athena. I don't hate this, because I mean, Athena is kind of debatable whether she's in the top 3, so I don't hate this. But Athena's parry is currently too punishing at a low level, so they've now reduced the damage of parry from 20 to 15. I get it. Parry is just a little bit too quick activation, and so you can just easily whip out parry, boom, 20 damage out of the bat. That is kind of a little bit hard hitting, so I can understand reducing a little bit for just on the lower end of skill ceiling for players. Izanami. Balancing the amount of damage that Izanami can do, especially when not successfully hitting all parts of her combos. Seeking Sickle reduced damage from 10 to 8 on each hit on both hits. Okay. And we're now also targeting her talents. Slicing Sickle reduced from 5 damage to 3. And Ambush has had reduced ultimate charge from 15% to 10%. It's hard to comment on. I mean, I find Athena's parry change is completely fine. Izanami's change is kind of awkward to comment on. I've not really played Izanami that much, and I haven't really seen like Izanami perform like super crazy outside of like sometimes I'll see her every now and then. So I haven't really seen too much of Izanami to be able to like, and I haven't really like played enough of Izanami to be able to like comment on these nerfs properly, but I'm going to assume they're okay for now. Sol is proposing a unique playstyle, but values were all around were not in line with the rest of the characters. We will revisit in the later patch to see how players are using a kit and how values are balanced compared to the rest of the roster. Disapparate has now increased damage from 6 to 10. Fireball has now increased damage on the initial impact from 10 to 15, and Combustion has increased damage by 2. So pretty much large damage changes coming all across the board for Sol. I don't really hate this, because I mean, the thing is with Sol, I think that Sol is a perfectly fine and balanced character. Aside from her talents are very absurd, and I'm sure in the later balance patch we're going to at least see one change to preheated, which was absolutely needed. But I don't think Sol really had an issue with her damage. I think, if anything, the only issues that Sol had was kind of like the end lag or the confirming with her held heavy, and sometimes even her normal heavy. Her heavies are a little bit awkward in terms of like targeting and tracking, and I think they just need a little bit cleaning up in terms of bug fixes. But I don't hate it. It's giving Sol a little bit more damage to her kit, but I don't think she really needed it. I mean, her damage is going to line up with the rest of the cast, and that means she's going to pump out, and she's going to be able to get to edge guarding stages a lot more quicker, but I just don't think she really needed it. If I'm being all perfectly honest, I don't think she needed them. But, here we go. And here he is, talk of the boy, Susano. Susano's playstyle is still something that we want in game, but his overall kit is way too effective. Air Light has now been reduced by 2 damage. Okay. I mean, that's fair enough, it does silly amounts of damage. Updraft has had reduced damage from 12 to 10. Stormcutter has also had reduced damage on the first hit of it from 10 till 5. This is a major change. Stormcutter has just been halved in its damage. The first part of Stormcutter, which is like the really long range kind of range leap, that's taking a major damage change, and that's kind of ouch. And then we have his talent Send Off, which has had 3 reduced damage from it. So once again, just reducing damage across the board for the top character, and even in the talents. When I'm looking at a change like Sol, right, we're just massively upping the damage of Sol. 10, 15, 10, and 12, like, that's a lot of damage. But then I'm looking at Susano, who's like, Stormcutter reduced damage of the first hit to 5, which was 10. Like, we're basically just, like, uplifting and, like, giving major damage buffs across the board to, like, some of like, the balanced characters, or even some of the just, like, some that are a little bit underperforming. And then we're just hitting the damage across the board of, like, all the top tiers. I understand you want to keep their playstyle. You want to keep the playstyle. Like, I understand that Susano, you want Susano to be the best aerial character in the game by far. That's understandable, but just targeting his damage is awkward. I think targeting the damage is really awkward. But that's all the changes that are coming in, that have already come in. They're live now. And then we have upcoming changes which will likely come in January, which will also include Zeus, King of Olympus, coming out. There's a whole read on his kit here. I'm not really going to touch too much on Zeus. I'd rather leave touching and talking about Zeus to his, when I get around to making his guide of him, and I'm sure there's going to be changes, but probably there's going to be balance changes made to Zeus before I even get around to making my guide on him, so that'll be fun to do. But we'll have a look at his little new skin here, which is called Cyberforged Zeus, which I'm assuming is an epic rarity skin, yep. Fully embraces the technology as electricity provides and will be available in the shop. Yeah. So this is available in the shop, so this will likely be an epic skin, rarity skin. So 1,000 runes within the rune store, within the rune shop, and honestly, that is a pretty nice skin. I'm imagining it's going to have some pretty good effects and some very nice voice lines, so I can't wait to see that. But now we're moving on further on to the later changes. And here we have what's called as core combat changes. You added a 0.2 seconds delay before you can cancel or recast your movement abilities on the following gods: Athena, Thor, Susano, Arthur, Thanatos, and Izanami. You had 2 problems on movement abilities. First, players are able to cancel these very early in order to reset aerial attacks, which was causing major imbalances and would mean that we would need to redesign air attacks for characters like Susano, as they punish players quite a lot and push them away into the knockout range and could be used to eliminate opponents early. Secondly, the ability and the animations were never designed to be instant confirm, and therefore would lead to some problems where players could still hit characters confirming their movement ability cast. The way the game works, the capsule stays where the movement ability is confirmed, so if you confirm straight away, you could get hit while you're animating in the air. Yes. We've implemented a technical design that prevents multiple players keeping enemies in long combos. When the system detects abusive combos being performed, it will apply a knockback to the victim in order to break the combo. This change will help prevent infinite combos in 1v2 and 1v3 scenarios. Okay, I really like this. This is giving players like opportunities in like 2s and 3s where they're by themselves, they're being bullied by pretty much the entire cast. Especially in 2s, this can happen a lot where a teammate will get eliminated early on just by both members, or even just being in the 1v2 scenario late game when a teammate has been knocked out. Especially in 2s, this will really help players from getting infinitely comboed, say in either light attacks or even in ability combos by the enemy, and it can actually give a pretty good standing chance on being able to recover and be able to fight back in those scenarios. So I think that's really, really good. Cratering force, the force at which you bounce off the ground after a spike, will now be increased by your percentage of vulnerability. That's actually really good. This will result in spikes not allowing to link in between different attacks, and effectively negate the ability for spikes to be used to chain combos together beyond certain vulnerability. Okay, so that's also a really good, nice change to see. And we move straight onto the God Balance again. Amaterasu's uppercut does not read well as it's a bit too fast and there's too much leeway for players to counter attacks with this fast of an ability startup. That change should help reduce the ability for Amaterasu to counter attacks while improving readability. Startup change to 0.25 seconds from 0.2, so a little bit more time to be able to react to sunlit uppercut before she'll end up hitting you in the air. I think people are going to say that this is not a good change and that that's a really short frame, but 0.25 seconds is actually quite a large frame window, especially in a fighting game, to be able to get things off like that. So that's really good. And on top of that, bug fixes make sure uppercut is sending opponents forward. I've noticed this bug on very many occasions where I've uppercut someone, but then I'll end up and I think that I've sent someone forward with the uppercut, and I go for a light auto, but then I'll just pass through them. I'll use the light auto and I'll just straight up pass through them. So it's good to know that they were aware of this and they have fixed it. So now the uppercut will always send opponents forwards, and now you can always get your guaranteed light auto that you're supposed to have. King Arthur. King Arthur's projectiles need to be more aggressive, so we think the extra projectile speed will help with that. We also want to encourage Arthur players to play around with the ultimate a lot more than what's currently done, so his ultimate has received a substantial buff. Soaring Edge increased wave slash projectile speed by 10%. Okay. I mean, that allows it to be able to potentially hit more often, so that's not too bad. And Might of Excalibur increased duration from 11 seconds to 13 seconds, which is really, really good. So now, with the talent that increases his ult for every hit that you get for 1.25 seconds, now that can probably be brought to a higher percentage, which is really nice. And his now deal 50% increased damage, which was 30% previously. That's a massive change. That means, I mean, King Arthur already had the increased range with the light autos, and we were already seeing, like, I mean, what we saw with King Arthur is that we saw people use it to save themselves, get themselves back on the ledge, and prevent opponents from staggering him and eliminating him off the map. And now and sometimes we would also see heavy spammers where it was just because of the increased range of his light and heavy attacks with Might of Excalibur. Now we're going to see that just hit even harder. So now we're going to see heavy attacks with that increased range just hit so much more harder and honestly probably eliminate a lot more, which is crazy. Athena's air heavy has now reduced end lag, so now she will be able to fire ability is a lot more quicker after landing from an air heavy, which is nice. Hercules' ultimate will now be a more interesting pattern to deal with as the third hit has less knockback than the rest hit. Berserker Rage reduced knockback of third hit by 17.5%. That is a lot of reduced knockback to be removed from an ability. I mean, that's his ultimate. That's his ultimate as well. So that's reduced knockback on the third hit of his ultimate by 17.5%. That is massive. I'm gonna have to see it in theory. I want to be able to see this change in theory, like how much that's actually going to affect Hercules before I say it's massive. But on paper, This sounds like a massive change and nerf towards Hercules' final hit of his ultimate, and but once again, I'm going to on paper it sounds like a massive nerf towards Hercules' ultimate, but we're just going to have to actually see it in theory before I can say this is actually a massive change. And reduced to his talents as well. Look up has now had 12 reduced, was 12 damage, and now has been reduced to 10. So for what I've seen a lot of talent changes across the board for a lot of the top gods. Not only has their damage been reduced, and some of the frustrating parts of their kits have been changed. Like a lot of people have problems with Hercules and twos. Hercules is the best twos character and one of the best twos characters in the game. So them doing things like this, and then also aiming it towards looking at his talents and reducing the damage through his talents, they're easing a lot of this up. They're easing they're making a lot of it a lot easier for players in like say twos and threes. So they're kind of easing things up. I get it. They don't want them to be definitely the strongest things, especially especially after Amaterasu and Susano already getting changes, who of course were just the king and queen across all three modes. So I can understand it. We want to also just tune down the others to make sure that they're not going to be the top dogs going into the next patch. And we're seeing another change is an army. Izanami forces players to adapt to her abilities for too long. We like the unique playstyle she proposes, but don't want to make sure her enemies can have opportunities too. Fade. Reduce stealth time to 3 seconds, which was 4 seconds. Yeah, so now Izanami can queue. So pretty much Izanami would play around her queue. You would queue, you would play around it you would wait around for a few seconds, and then you would wait for the enemy to engage, and then you would engage on top of them, whether it be with Seeking Sickle, light autos, a heavy, or even your F. So seeing a change like this, seeing that her stealth has been reduced by 1 second is a pretty big change. And now that means I'm pretty sure that if not all characters can just Q to stall the time of her stealth and then play into her. Granted, people could just probably do that anyway with knowing the tech of dust clouds still appearing when she jumps and stuff. So I guess it's okay. And here's more changes to Sol. As I was expecting it, there's the changes to her talent preheated, reducing the ultimate charge gained at the beginning of the game from 20% to 15%. This was expected. Preheated was just way too strong, and so I'm not surprised at all. And they also fixed the bug on combustion, where you can put the ability on half cooldown if you dodge just as the explosion occurs. Now this is actually just a thing with combustion. You can cancel combustion just by dodging, and you'll be able to put the ability on half cooldown. You'll be able to refund half the cooldown in the ability by doing that. But this is where the second half of the bug fix comes in, which is the problem, is because you can do this while you get the explosion of combustion, meaning that you'll actually do damage and put the ability on half cooldown. So now they fixed that. If you dodge while the explosion goes off, you'll get your full damage, but you'll also get it on full cooldown instead of half cooldown. But I'm presuming if you do the dodge before, it actually properly fires, then you'll still get the half cooldown. Just assuming. We don't know too much from the wording exactly. And then we have further changes to Susano. The main changes here will be a reduced time to profit from a Storm Cutter ability, meaning that punishing mistakes against Susano will be much easier. Air Light into Air Heavy is now a true combo. I don't hate it, but I also feel like I think this is a slight shift. I think this is a shift just to show that Susano's Air Light Air Heavy is a true just like Amaterasu Air Light Air Heavy. Air Light Air Heavy for Amaterasu as a spike is a true combo. So now we're seeing that same effect with Susano. That's now just being classified as a true combo and will work that way. And that's a little bit of a shift, and I think that's okay. Storm Cutter, reduced time allowable between firing hits, has now been reduced by 0.75 seconds. It was 4 seconds, now 3.25. I don't hate it. I mean, for some reason, Stormcutter is longer in DKO, has longer time between firing in DKO than in Smite. I'm pretty sure in Smite we have 3 seconds between casts of Stormcutter to be able to use auto attacks and auto attack cancel and stuff. So I'm surprised that DKO Susano got a lot more leeway with the timing on his Stormcutter than others. But I guess different pacing, different games, different ways things would work. So, And here's the man of the hour, Thor. Thor clearly needed quality of life changes on his whirlwind in order to be able to compete against other characters. His hold heavy range was not in line with the rest of the roster. We're looking forward to see how these changes will perform. Hold heavy, warp distance now increased by 4 meters. And for those who are unaware of what warp distance means, this basically means the character and the model movement. Not the attack distance. Attack distance and warp distance are 2 completely different things. Attack distance is how far the attack will go, and the forward cone of the attack, but the warp distance is how far the actual character model will move. So they kind of intertwine with each other. I'm going over this very briefly, but I can explain this more in the new series that I could create called Meteoric Mechanics, which can break down all of the mechanics of DKO, including things like attack distance and warp distance. If people are interested in that, please do let me know in the comments, and I can start a series up after that, after Christmas as well. And, you know, just small things like that. Anvil of Dawn increased radius by 10%. I don't think this is a change that's really going to get noticed by any players. I think this just means that he has a bigger radius for recovery, a little bit bigger radius for being able to hit people. I don't really think that's going to change too much of anything, though. And Berserker's Barrage allows Thor to dodge out of the ability and allows him to jump during the ability. This is huge. Now with Berserker's Barrage, you will be able to hit people during the air while, like, so for example, if you want to edge guard someone with Berserker's Barrage, you can now hit them off of the edge, and then you can jump with them to get that final smack, and that final smack will honestly probably KO, depending on the vulnerability. So this is really nice to see that you can now jump during the full duration of this ability, and you can also dodge out of it to cancel it. And I'm assuming if you dodge out of it to cancel it early, then you'll get refunded cooldown. And you also have the base speed increased a bit from 30% to 40%, meaning that Thor will now move faster while casting it. That is absolutely good changes for Berserker's Barrage. But to reflect the fact that they increased the base movement speed for Berserker's Barrage, they've gone ahead and taken it away from Spinning Spree. Spinning Spree now having reduced movement speed bonus from 25% to 15%. So we're giving 10% movement speed, base movement speed, to the base of the ability, and we're taking 10% away from the talent. So there's this. So effectively, Thor players are now playing with a little bit of what Thor had in his talent, what later Thor players had with the talent of Spinning Spree. So now, so earlier level Thors will now get a 10% increase, which is really, really good. But now the later talent of Thor, people who had the later talents of Thor now just losing 10% more. But I think that's still basically, but I think this is just kind of a little bit of a shift, just means that it makes it so that it doesn't make Thor even more faster than he already is. We're keeping the same movement, but we're just now giving a little bit more access to players earlier on, which I think is okay. I think that's really nice. And what seems to be the last balance change is Ymir. Ymir's hold heavy was always intended to be longer range than the rest of the cast, but this is way too surprising for players entering the matchup. The main change is for Frost Breath. Currently, Ymir can counter all attacks with this ability while he has a super armor, meaning he would not take the damage. We're making that change so that players can still inflict damage via attacks when Ymir is using Frost Breath. Hold heavy, warp distance reduced by 2.5 meters. So that's, I mean, here's the thing, Ymir has the biggest attack distance of the biggest attack distance in the game. Currently barring at 17 meters in the game, and this is a graph that once again I can get into details if you guys want to see Meteoric Mechanics, because there is a graph out there. And I will say, and all that information for the attack range is on there, and we can do that for meteoric mechanics and stuff. Ymir has the highest heavy attack in the game, highest range heavy attack, and even light attack in the game. So bringing down the warp distance, the model movement, that will bring it down a little bit. So that's okay. I don't think that he still has the longest range attacks in the game. So that's honestly still that's still very much true. It just means his character is moving a little bit less than that. Though, once again, we have to see it in theory, because on paper it sounds okay, but in theory, it could be a lot worse than I'm imagining. Frost Breath. Reduce frozen time by 0.5 seconds. Don't really hate it. I mean, this also kind of slightly brings it in line with Ymir's freeze, because once again, I know it's different for, different genres, different everything, but 3-second freeze, come on, not even Smite Ymir has that. And this ability can no longer counter, meaning that you can actually deal a lot of damage to him, including you still can't interrupt him with abilities because of course he has the super armor, but now it's not just a straight up counter and you can actually deal damage to him using those abilities. So this is really nice to see. And then here in the talents we see kind of a little bit of a fix, but also a little bit of a nerf. Frostbite now getting reduced to 6 damage per creator, which was initially 8, and they've now capped it to a maximum of being able to hit it from wall to wall to 2. So this pretty much caps out at 12 damage, where this used to be infinite. Before it was taken out of the game, this was uncapped, and you could just build. You could wall someone, you could freeze them, hit them against the side of the wall with the frostbite talent, just ping pong them between the wall, and just watch the damage raise and raise and raise until they were just invulnerability range. You use a heavy, and then you just say goodbye to them. So seeing that being capped down to 12 damage maximum, I think is a really good change. So I mean, overall with the patch notes, there's a lot of things I agree with. There's a lot of things that sound like powerful changes on paper, but we're gonna have to wait until they're actually in the game to see how much they actually affect the character before we need to call for actual changes towards them. And then there's just kind of some, there's kind of some changes that I somewhat don't agree with. I'm not really sure why. For example, already live, we've hit Izanami seeking sickle damage. I don't know why we're doing this when, say, Mjolnir's Attunement or whatever, right? Mjolnir's Attunement, Thor's projectile, that's hitting for 10 damage a tick and then critting for 15. Why is Izanami's projectile doesn't crit? Why is she being affected by this? So it's hard. Some of the things are hard to argue with, but all I'm gonna leave this to is the patch notes are okay. I think they're good notes, and I can't really disagree with them too much. I think a lot of the changes were good, and some of the changes were just good on paper or overbearing on paper, but we don't know how much that actually is practically. But anyway, so if I don't end up recovering from this illness, I will try to keep you guys updated on that. Then unfortunately that means that there probably very likely won't, unless I decide to say screw it and I will just go ahead and make a guide anyway, then I probably won't be making a guide for this week, and chances are I probably won't start doing up DKO content again and YouTube content in general, maybe even live streams and such. I probably very likely won't be starting that up until after New Year's. Maybe I might sneak out a video before New Year's happens, so in between Boxing Day and up until New Year's, maybe I might be able to sneak out a video during then, but it's very likely that until the start of January, you probably won't see another video coming out from me. And if that is the case, then I would just like to say to everyone, have a Merry Christmas. Have some amazing time with your loved ones. Enjoy your dinners. And if I don't make a new video before New Year's as well, then I'd also like to say Happy New Year's. And stay safe out there, of course. I'm Laffey, signing out.